It's time for a dragon rant. It's time for the dragon rant.
Hello, welcome to the first episode of Dragon Rants. This is where I, Candy Dragon, get to speak about some of my opinions about some music. And that's all it is discussion. And if you want to leave comments and have your opinions heard too, that's what the comment section is for. Just be respectful of other people, please. And the first thing I'm going to do is top 5 underestimated albums. And at number 5, I'm already going to break the rules. I just set up the rules by telling you what it was called. It's self-explanatory, but instead of naming an album, I'm going to name a artist's entire career, and that's Roger Daltrey's solo albums. Actually, there's a lot of gold in those albums and a lot of really good songs. And of course, Roger Daltrey is an incredible singer, not much of a songwriter, so he usually hired songwriters to help him. Russ Ballard and other heavyweights of the 70s, they helped him out a lot. But there's some great songs. He does some Leo Sayer, One Man Band. That's a great tune. And then, let's see, until you get to about the 80s, and then he puts out Under a Raging Moon, which is kind of a tribute to Keith Moon. And that one's really cool because on that track, he basically puts together some of the best drummers in the business, and they all take turns doing like a drum solo pretty much. And just sort of playing on that old thing, it would take 10 drummers to replace Keith Moon. Well, no, it takes more, I think. But, you can't imitate that kind of style. It's just, I'm pretty good on the drums, estimating his style. But, it's like, you had to be him. But anyways, back to the albums. Yeah, it was a pretty cool album, but it was definitely very 80s production, and that was to continue throughout the 80s. And then he sort of just stopped putting out solo albums. But if you're going to get one album, I would suggest you get, I believe it was released in the early 80s or late 70s, but it's just called The Best of Roger Daltrey. There's a picture of him looking in a mirror. I think he's holding a microphone behind his back or something. You can tell his hair's there, as it always was back then. Anyways, going to the number 4, keeping it sort of in the same area, The Who, It's Hard. This album came out in the early 80s, and they had a lot of hills to climb. Keith Moon had passed away. They did put out one successful album before called Face Dances, and I don't really like that album very much. It's got some really good songs on it, but I would say it's about half and half. Half good, half utter trash. Some of the songs I don't understand. Khaki. Come on, man. No, Pete, no. Anyways, but thankfully on that album there are a few bangers written by John Entwistle. But It's Hard, I think pretty much from front to back, it's all killer. No filler. There's some songs that are very, I guess people would consider not Who-like, but there's a ballad on there, and I don't know. It's just overall, the album delivers it's got this energy to it, and it's got sort of just a feeling about it that it's really hard to describe, but I think it's a stellar album. I think people just don't like it because they're just like, oh, it doesn't have Keith Moon on it. Yeah, and I'm like, whatever, man. It's like, they didn't replace him. They got somebody totally different, and get over it, maybe? I feel like those guys had every right to continue on. And that I know that opinion goes against a lot of other people's opinions, but Pete writes the Who's music and Roger sings it the best. And John Entwistle was the best bass player to play on that stuff. And if they're all still around, I didn't see any reason for them to not continue and celebrate the legacy of music that they made. As far as new music, they've done all right since then. But moving on to number 3, ZZ Top put out Rhythmine. This album kind of was released to, I would say, a lukewarm sort of response. And I believe the reason is because they had been on the decline for a few years. Afterburner, they, the quality of the music did begin to sag a little, and they were getting too wrapped up in that electronic stuff. And I think it kind of overtook the band a little too much, where on the first 2 albums they did that in the 80s, I think it was cool. It worked out. It was kind of a fusion of some sorts, and it really worked out for them. But I'm not a big fan of the few albums that followed after those 2. And they came out with Rhythmine, and I was shocked. I heard it, and I was like, this is the heaviest blues rock album I've ever heard in my freaking life. And the whole album's killer. Killer, no filler. Every guitar riff sounds so dirty. And they also experimented with doing percussion beds that Frank Beard plays drums over, and it's really effective. And I think it's a great album. Moving on, we got to number 2, which is Sepultura with their controversial album Roots. And I was there, following Sepultura back then. When Beneath the Remains came out, I got that. Very thrashy, but kind of weird. They always had this sort of sideways sound to them that I always really appreciated. But as their albums started to get more popular and they developed their sound more, they started bringing in more of their Brazilian roots and bringing in different kind of percussive elements. And that really shows its face on Chaos AD, and which is an excellent album. But there was still enough thrashy riffs on there where I think people didn't mind it so much. But the groove was there. The groove was always a part of their music. Even when they're blasting away, that middle part, it'd be like, you could get into it. You could bob your head to it. It had a groove. They always had groove in their music. So them like selling out to nu metal, which was the usual complaint about the album, I just don't buy it. I just think they evolved. They tuned down their guitars more. I think the proof is in the pudding. The album is heavier than all living hell. It's amazing. It's such an amazing album. And for people to just brush it off because it's not more thrash. Dude, it's like, I feel like there's room in the world for 2 different kinds of bands. And there are 2 different kinds of bands, and I like them that way. And you have AC/DC. Rock, same old shit all the fucking time, driven down the line. That's what they should do, because they do it better than anybody else. It's what they do. It's what they've always been about. Cool. Sepultura never put out an album that sounded the same. They were more, to me, in lines with David Bowie, where it's just like, you don't know what you're going to get. And they perfected that thrash sound. And then they moved on. Metallica did the same thing. And, we can cry, sell out all we want. But, who doesn't get bored doing the same thing over and over again? I mean, I think AC/DC, it works for them because it's just like, we love rock and roll and we're trying to keep rock and roll alive. And that makes sense. That makes sense to me, and I'm cool with that. There's room for that in music. But most bands, I want to see them evolve and change. And I may not like where they go. I don't like where Sepultura went after Max left. But I don't care. Roots is an amazing album. If you say it isn't, if you say that, all I have to ask is it heavy? Do you want to bang your head when it plays? That's it. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about, well, they used to be thrash. Where? Dude, there's tons of thrash bands out there playing. There's up and coming new bands that sound just like old thrash bands. Go support them. But, don't knock on Sepultura. That's crazy. Anyways, the last one is a biggie. And I couldn't believe when this album came out, I heard it and I was expecting everybody to lose their minds like I was. And that's Black Sabbath, Dehumanizer. For one, Dio's coming back. That's pretty exciting. I think part of the problem is they started off with Time Machine and I believe TV Crimes, which are great songs in context of the album, but not the strongest songs. They should have led with Master of Insanity, just to show people this is how heavy it can get. Like that Master of Insanity is one of the heaviest Sabbath songs I've ever heard, and they created heavy. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody says. They can say it's not classic Sabbath sound or blah, blah, blah. Man, again, is it heavy? It's heavy. And is Dio amazing on this album? Oh, man. And Vinny on the drums. He is sick on this album. He is so on it. His beats just, they pummel the earth. You couldn't ask for better. The only thing you could ask for is Bill Ward. But let's face it, Bill Ward doesn't play like that. Bill Ward is not that on top kind of a drummer. And that's why we love him. He's that kind of groovy, he's got those jazz hands, man. Like, he's just like got that groove built into him. But, this is a great Black Sabbath album. Anybody, I don't understand why it didn't blow up. And they were playing halls on that tour. I'm like, what? These guys should be playing stadiums. This stuff is Iron Maiden level quality. And I would also like to say that, as a runner-up, I would also like to say another Black Sabbath album that I think doesn't get its due, even though it's really a quality album. And that would be Eternal Idol, with Tony Martin on vocals. I forget the rest of the lineup, but that's a great album. But people don't like it because, it's Tony Martin on vocals, and that's not Dio, and that's not Ozzy, so it's not worth listening to. Wrong. There's some of that 80s material. They put out a few good albums with Tony Martin on vocals. Not all of them were super strong, but most of them were. Anyways, that wraps up my little rant, and I'll be doing more of these. And if you have any ideas for subjects, go ahead and suggest them in the comments, and I'll talk to you later. Dragon peace.